The Thalwire were a race steeped in the lore of their own supremacy. For eons, they had ruled vast swathes of the galaxy, their name whispered with reverence and fear. Their history was one of conquest and control, where they had bent lesser species to their will, expanding their empire with calculated precision. They considered themselves the apex predators of the cosmos, a title they wore with pride. Their sacred hunting grounds, untouched for millennia, were a symbol of their enduring legacy, a place where only the most elite of their warriors were allowed to tread, and even then, only during special rites of passage. The Thalwire viewed these grounds not just as a territory, but as a living testament to their dominance, a place where their ancestors had honed their predatory skills. No other species had ever dared to encroach upon these revered lands, and the Thalwire had never imagined a situation where this would be challenged. To them, their power was unassailable, their right to rule unquestioned. It was with this mindset that they approached the latest reports from their scouts, confident in their control over their domain. The first reports came in as whispers, the scouts barely believing what they had discovered. They spoke of an outpost, constructed hastily yet with a sense of permanence, nestled deep within the Thalwire's most sacred territory. The architecture was foreign, but unmistakable. This was no mere incursion by a lesser species looking to test boundaries. This was a foothold, a deliberate claim on what had always been Thalwire land. The outpost was not large, but it was formidable in its design. The humans, as the scouts identified them, had built it with a sense of urgency, yet there was a confidence in its placement, as if they expected to stay. The scouts detailed the strange technology the humans employed, noting its efficiency and the seeming ease with which they had adapted to the environment. What shocked the Thalwire more than the presence of the humans was the audacity of their actions. The humans had shown no fear in establishing themselves within a place that even the most battle-hardened Thalwire warriors approached with reverence. This was no accident. It was a challenge, a direct affront to everything the Thalwire believed about their own superiority. As the reports were relayed to the Thalwire High Council, a storm of emotions swept through the assembly. Anger, disbelief, and a deep sense of violation filled the chamber. The councillors, each a veteran of countless campaigns, struggled to comprehend the brazenness of the humans. How could a species so young, so untested in the broader galactic theater, dare to encroach upon the Thalwire's most hallowed grounds? To many, the answer was simple: the humans had to be taught a lesson, one that would echo across the stars as a warning to any who might think to follow in their footsteps. But not all were so quick to dismiss the humans as mere upstarts. A few voices within the council cautioned against underestimating them. The humans had risen quickly in the galactic hierarchy, their influence spreading faster than anyone had anticipated. They were a species that thrived on challenges, often turning what seemed like impossible situations into victories. Some councillors argued that the very fact that the humans had chosen to establish an outpost in such a dangerous and forbidden place spoke to a level of confidence, or perhaps desperation, that warranted careful consideration. The debate grew heated as the councillors weighed the risks and rewards. Could the humans have discovered something within the sacred grounds that the Thalwire had overlooked? Was this a strategic move, a precursor to a larger invasion? Or was it simply an act of defiance, meant to provoke the Thalwire into a reckless response? The captain, a seasoned warrior with countless victories to his name, listened to the arguments with growing impatience. He had fought and bled for the Thalwire Empire, and to him, the answer was clear. The humans needed to be crushed, their outposts reduced to rubble, and their presence erased from the sacred grounds. Driven by a deep sense of duty and pride, the captain took command of the situation. His voice, firm and unyielding, cut through the remaining debates. The humans were an insult to the Thalwire's honor, a stain that needed to be wiped clean. The captain's decision was final. The Thalwire would launch an attack on the human outposts, an overwhelming show of force that would leave no doubt about who truly ruled this corner of the galaxy. The council, recognizing the captain's resolve and the need for swift action, fell in line behind his command. Preparations for the assault began immediately, the Thalwire fleet mobilizing with the cold efficiency that had brought them victory time and again. The captain oversaw every detail, ensuring that nothing was left to chance. He knew that the humans had to be made an example of, their defeat a message to any other species that might harbor thoughts of defiance. The Thalwire were not just going to reclaim their sacred grounds, they were going to remind the galaxy why they had been feared for so long. As the fleet readied for departure, the captain allowed himself a moment of reflection. The humans had been foolish to challenge the Thalwire, and now they would pay the price. He would see to it personally that the outpost was obliterated, and that the humans would never forget the day they dared to defy the Thalwire. The Thalwire fleet descended upon the human outpost with all the force and precision of a well-oiled war machine. Their ships, bristling with advanced weaponry and reinforced with centuries of technological superiority, moved into position around the outpost with an air of inevitable dominance. The captain, seated at the helm of the lead ship, watched with satisfaction as his forces executed the meticulously planned assault. From the moment the order was given, waves of Thalwire fighters streamed towards the outpost, their weapons systems locked on target, ready to obliterate the intruders who dared to defile their sacred grounds. To the Thalwire, this was just another routine operation. Their confidence was rooted in countless victories against other species who had underestimated them. The humans, with their relatively primitive technology and limited experience in galactic warfare, were expected to crumble under the sheer might of the Thalwire assault. The initial strikes were devastating. Massive energy beams rained down on the human structures, reducing them to smoldering ruins. Explosions lit up the dark void of space, and the Thalwire soldiers, watching the destruction unfold, felt a surge of pride. The battle seemed to be over before it had even begun. But then, something unexpected happened. As the smoke and debris began to clear, the Thalwire forces noticed something strange. The human defenses, though battered, had not been completely destroyed. In fact, they seemed to be regrouping, preparing to launch a counteroffensive. The humans, who should have been retreating or surrendering, were fighting back with a ferocity and coordination that caught the Thalwire completely off guard. The outposts, far from being a simple collection of buildings, revealed hidden layers of defense. Automated turrets sprang to life, targeting Thalwire ships with deadly accuracy, while ground forces emerged from concealed bunkers, armed with weapons that seemed to adapt to the Thalwire's own tactics. The captain watched in disbelief as his fleet encountered resistance far beyond anything they had anticipated. The humans were not simply defending, they were counterattacking, and with a level of precision that suggested they had been prepared for this confrontation all along. The Thalwire soldiers, trained to expect easy victories, now found themselves in a fight for survival. As they attempted to push forward, they were met with a barrage of firepower that decimated their ranks. Squadrons of Thalwire fighters were picked off one by one, their ships torn apart by weapons that seemed almost too advanced for a species as young as humanity. Panic began to spread through the Thalwire ranks as the first losses were reported. Ships that had once been the pride of the fleet were now reduced to burning wrecks, their crews lost in the chaos of battle. The Thalwire, who had never before encountered a force they couldn't overwhelm, were now experiencing something entirely new: defeat. The captain, sensing the shift in the tide of battle, attempted to rally his forces, but it was clear that the situation was rapidly spiraling out of control. The humans, once dismissed as insignificant, were proving to be far more formidable than anyone had imagined. As the battle dragged on, the Thalwire began to realize that they were not just facing a well-prepared defense. They were up against an enemy that had studied them, learned from their tactics, and adapted in ways that the Thalwire had never thought possible. The human forces, now fully engaged, moved with a unity and purpose that belied their reputation as a divided and inexperienced species. Every move the Thalwire made was countered with ruthless efficiency, and every attempt to break through the human defenses was met with devastating losses. The captain's confidence, once unshakable, began to waver as the reality of the situation set in. He watched helplessly as his fleet was slowly but surely dismantled, the once mighty Thalwire warships reduced to smoldering debris floating in the void. The humans, far from being the easy prey the Thalwire had expected, had turned the tables on their attackers. They were no longer defending, they were hunting, and the Thalwire were their prey. For the first time in his career, the captain felt a cold knot of fear in his gut. The Thalwire were not just losing, they were being systematically destroyed by an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. The battle that had begun with such confidence and power was now a desperate struggle for survival. The captain, surrounded by the wreckage of his fleet and the screams of his dying soldiers, realized too late the true nature of the enemy they had underestimated. The humans were not just another species to be conquered, they were predators, and the Thalwire had unwittingly become their prey. The initial attack, meant to be a show of Thalwire strength, as the battle raged on, something unsettling began to take shape within the Thalwire ranks. The humans, who had initially seemed overwhelmed by the sheer force of the Thalwire assault, were now displaying behavior that defied all expectations. It was as if they could predict the Thalwire's every move, countering each strategy with terrifying precision. What had started as a straightforward conquest was quickly turning into a nightmarish game of cat and mouse, with the Thalwire on the losing end. The captain, watching the unfolding disaster, noticed these patterns first. The humans were not just reacting to the Thalwire attacks, they were anticipating them, sometimes even before the orders were given. Every feint, every maneuver, every attempt to regain the upper hand was met with a swift and decisive counter from the humans. It was as if the humans were reading their minds, staying one step ahead at every turn. The Thalwire, masters of strategy and warfare, found themselves outmaneuvered by an enemy they had grossly underestimated. The strangeness of the situation could not be ignored. Reports flooded in from across the fleet, human forces appearing where they should not have been, seemingly aware of Thalwire movements before they even happened. There was no logical explanation for how the humans were doing this. The captain, desperate for answers, ordered his scientists and intelligence officers to uncover the source of this uncanny ability. What they found shook the Thalwire to their core. In the depths of their analysis, Thalwire scientists stumbled upon data that revealed a horrifying truth about the humans. They were not the ordinary beings the Thalwire had assumed them to be. These humans had undergone extensive genetic modifications, transforming themselves into something far more dangerous than the Thalwire had ever imagined. The modifications were designed for one purpose: to create the ultimate predators. These humans possessed enhanced physical abilities far beyond the normal range of their species. They were faster, stronger, and more resilient, able to withstand conditions that would cripple or kill most others. But it wasn't just their physical capabilities that set them apart, it was their mental acuity. The humans had been engineered to process information and react with unparalleled speed. Their brains, fine-tuned for combat, allowed them to analyze and anticipate threats with a level of precision that bordered on the supernatural. The implications were staggering. The Thalwire, who had always prided themselves on their superior intellect and battle prowess, now realized they were facing an enemy that had been specifically designed to outmatch them in every way. The humans were not just skilled fighters, they were predators, honed by their own technology and evolution to be the perfect hunters. And the Thalwire, who had come to their sacred grounds as conquerors, now found themselves as prey. Panic began to spread through the Thalwire leadership as the full extent of their mistake became clear. The initial arrogance that had driven them to attack the human outpost was now replaced by a deep and growing fear. They had thought the humans were weak, but they were anything but. The humans had lured them in, allowing the Thalwire to believe they were in control, only to turn the tables with devastating effectiveness. The Thalwire were not just losing a battle, they were facing annihilation at the hands of an enemy they had woefully underestimated. The captain, who had once been so sure of his victory, now grappled with the reality that his fleet was on the verge of being wiped out. The humans, with their genetically enhanced abilities, were systematically dismantling everything the Thalwire had thrown at them. The captain's orders, once carried out with precision and confidence, were now tinged with desperation as he tried to find a way to salvage the situation. But it was becoming increasingly clear that there was no escape from the nightmare that had engulfed his fleet. The fear that gripped the Thalwire was palpable. The humans were not just an enemy, they were an unstoppable force, driven by instincts that had been engineered for one purpose: to hunt and destroy any who opposed them. The Thalwire, who had always been the predators, now found themselves hunted in a way they had never experienced before. The captain, once so full of pride and determination, now faced the terrifying reality that his fleet was being methodically hunted down by a species that had mastered the art of predation. In the heart of the Thalwire command ship, the mood was one of growing dread. The realization that the humans were not only surviving but thriving in the midst of what should have been their defeat was a bitter pill to swallow. The humans had turned the Thalwire's own tactics against them, using their superior intellect and strength to gain the upper hand. The captain, now fully aware of the catastrophic error he had made in underestimating the humans, could only watch as his fleet continued to fall apart under the relentless onslaught. The Thalwire, once the masters of the galaxy, were now facing their own extinction at the hands of a species they had deemed inferior. The captain knew that there was no victory to be had here, only survival, and even that was slipping away with each passing moment. The moment the Thalwire fleet turned to retreat, the humans began their relentless pursuit. What was supposed to be a tactical withdrawal quickly devolved into a frantic scramble for survival. The Thalwire ships, once the epitome of power and precision, were now fleeing in disarray, their formations shattered. But there was no escape. The humans, with their superior speed and tactical cunning, anticipated every move, striking with surgical precision whenever a Thalwire ship attempted to break away. Each time the Thalwire thought they had found a safe path, the humans were already there, lying in wait, ready to strike. The once organized fleet was now a series of isolated, panicked vessels, each trying to outrun an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. The Thalwire captain, who had prided himself on his strategic brilliance, found himself cornered, his every decision countered with ruthless efficiency. The humans had turned the retreat into a hunt, and the Thalwire were their prey. The fear within the Thalwire ranks grew with every passing moment. The soldiers, once proud warriors, were now gripped by a terror they had never known. Reports of ships disappearing without a trace, of entire crews being wiped out in seconds, spread like wildfire. Paranoia set in as they realized the humans were not just pursuing them, they were toying with them, picking them off one by one. The Thalwire, who had always believed in their superiority, now felt the cold grip of fear tighten around their hearts. The psychological toll on the Thalwire was immense. Soldiers who had faced countless battles without flinching now trembled at the thought of the next human attack. Every shadow, every blip on the radar, became a source of terror. They no longer trusted their instruments, their instincts, or even each other. The humans were in their heads, and the fear of what could be lurking just beyond their sight was enough to drive some to the brink of madness. The once unified fleet was now a collection of individuals, each driven by a primal need to survive, even at the expense of their comrades. The captain, who had once commanded with an iron will, struggled to maintain control over his crew. The once disciplined soldiers were now breaking under the pressure, their fear of the humans outweighing their loyalty to the Thalwire cause. Desperation set in as the captain watched his command deteriorate, his authority eroding with each failed attempt to regroup and counter the human onslaught. The humans had turned the tables so completely that the Thalwire no longer knew how to fight back. They only knew how to run, and even that was proving impossible. One by one, the Thalwire ships fell. The humans, relentless and methodical, targeted the weakest links first, isolating and destroying them before moving on to the next. The Thalwire could do nothing but watch as their numbers dwindled, each loss a reminder of their impending doom. The captain, once so confident in his fleet's invincibility, now felt the crushing weight of his own hubris. He had led his people into a trap, and now they were being hunted down like animals. The once mighty Thalwire fleet, reduced to a fraction of its former strength, was now nothing more than scattered wreckage drifting in the void. The humans, having dismantled the Thalwire defenses, were closing in for the kill. The captain, surrounded by the remnants of his shattered command, knew there was no escape. The humans had outmatched them in every way, turning what should have been a victorious campaign into a nightmare of their own making. The realization that they were not just losing, but being hunted to extinction, was a bitter pill for the Thalwire to swallow. The captain, his voice heavy with the weight of his failure, could only watch as the humans tightened their grip, leaving no avenue of escape. The Thalwire, once the hunters, were now the hunted, their fate sealed by their own arrogance. In the end, there was no grand battle, no final stand. The Thalwire were picked off one by one, their resistance crumbling under the relentless pressure of the human assault. The Thalwire captain, with what little remained of his once mighty fleet, prepared for the inevitable. The realization that there was no escape had long set in, but pride and duty compelled him to fight to the end. His remaining forces, battered and demoralized, knew this was their last stand. There was no strategy left to implement, no brilliant maneuver that could turn the tide. This was survival, pure and simple, a desperate attempt to hold on to whatever shred of honor they could salvage from the ruins of their defeat. The humans, relentless and methodical, closed in on the Thalwire. There was no mercy in their approach, no hesitation. The Thalwire had challenged them, and now they would face the full consequences of that decision. The captain ordered his ships to form a defensive line, a final barrier against the inevitable onslaught. Every remaining weapon was brought to bear, every remaining soldier steeled themselves for the end. The Thalwire had always been warriors, and they would die as warriors, even if it was clear that their enemy was far beyond anything they had faced before. The battle that followed was intense, a chaotic flurry of firepower and desperation. The Thalwire fought with everything they had left, but it was not enough. The humans, with their superior tactics and predatory instincts, dismantled the Thalwire defenses with a cold precision that left no room for hope. One by one, the Thalwire ships were torn apart, their hulls breached, their crews lost to the void. The captain, at the heart of the battle, directed his forces with grim determination, knowing that each command brought them closer to their doom, but unable to stop himself from fighting on. It wasn't long before the Thalwire line began to crumble. The humans, showing no signs of fatigue or hesitation, exploited every weakness, every gap in the Thalwire defenses. The once proud warriors, who had faced countless enemies and emerged victorious, now found themselves overwhelmed by an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. The captain watched as his ships were destroyed, one after the other, his heart heavy with the realization that this was the end. In the final moments, as the last of his ships fell to the relentless human assault, the captain allowed himself a moment of reflection. He had believed in the superiority of the Thalwire, in their right to rule the galaxy unchallenged. But now, as he stood on the brink of defeat, he realized the folly of that arrogance. The humans were more than just another species. They were predators, honed by their own ingenuity and relentless drive to survive. They had taken everything the Thalwire had thrown at them and turned it against them with devastating effect. The captain's final thoughts were of regret. Regret that he had underestimated the humans, that he had led his people into a battle they could never hope to win. He had been so sure of their victory, so certain that the Thalwire were invincible. But now, as the last of his forces were wiped out, he knew that he had been wrong. The humans had shown them what true predation looked like, and it was something the Thalwire had never truly understood. As the captain's ship was engulfed in flames, he sent out one final message, a warning to any who might think to challenge humanity in the future. The Thalwire had paid the ultimate price for their arrogance, and he wanted the galaxy to know it. Humanity was not to be trifled with. They were a force that would hunt down any who dared to oppose them, a lesson that the Thalwire had learned too late. In the end, there was nothing left but the silence of space, filled with the wreckage of the Thalwire fleet. The humans, victorious, left behind a graveyard of ships and the memory of a battle that would echo across the galaxy. The message was clear: humanity was not just another species. They were predators who could not be underestimated, and those who did would pay the ultimate price. The Thalwire had challenged them, and they had been hunted down, their legacy reduced to nothing more than a cautionary tale for those who would follow.